So this one I have the idea, but I don't know exactly what the fuck I'm gonna say because I did start a zine years ago and it was successful. Let's just put it that way, right? I'm not bragging or any other shit. It was a time that it was easy to do it, right? So how I did it back then was I made a Facebook page for it. Actually, before that, when it first very started, it was still MySpace. That's right. Shit, it wasn't that long ago. So MySpace, I got the email address to a band that I already kind of knew that was from my area because I was based my whole shit off music. And I hit them up and sent them the questions. They answered them, and that was my first interview, right? I knew that the zine was only about one thing, and that was getting bands heard. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. It was a way to hopefully get bands heard. Right? I've been into punk and shit for a long time. That's what it's covering. It covered metal, all kinds of shit, right? Basically, if it was punk adjacent and it wasn't on the fucking radio and all that, yeah. And all smaller bands, shit like that, didn't really cover any huge bands or anything like that because they don't need the fucking help. You know what I'm saying? So that's what the idea behind it was. But when things took off is when I brought it back and did it on Facebook. This was over a decade ago, maybe close to two. I forget. It's been a long ass time, right? So what happened is I made a page. I started find using the search function to find bands, shit like that, and add them, right? Because it was like a personal page, I guess. Because the most amount of people you could have on there was 5,000, right? And I hit that 5,000 mark probably within a month. And the reason it worked is this simple: bands are more than willing to do interviews, to let you listen to the shit, say shit about it. And nobody knew this, but I wasn't going to shit on a record, right? Unless if it was completely fucking horrible, I wasn't going to shit on a record. I was going to let you know, hey, if you like this style of music, maybe check these guys out. If you're into this other stuff, maybe not, but that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So, what's going on? But that's really something that made it blow up fast. You know what I mean? Because musicians would tell other musicians, and I didn't have to reach out to anybody anymore. People were reaching out to me fast because the bands were letting it be known, hey, um, we just did an interview over here. You know what I'm saying? And because of that, people would check out the shit, they'd like the interview, and then they come back for more. Like I said, this was a long time ago when I did this, like, I don't know, close to 20 years, long time. But that's how I was able to use Facebook and be able to do that, and quickly got to the 5,000 mark. And I was doing that for a few years off and on. I was getting records sent to me from all over the world, for me to listen to and shit. So it worked out easy. Now, did I get lucky? Possibly, because the genres and stuff that I was dealing with, the people that are into it are really into it. And there's a lot of musicians that are into the stuff. So musicians tell the musicians, and word gets out super, super fucking quick. You'd be surprised, right? And that's just how it is. What's going on? And the questions in my interviews were basically always the same, right? Maybe in a different order. The first one was always, tell me your name and all that. But the reason that the questions didn't change, and I'm not saying if you started seeing, if you're doing interviews and stuff, that yours shouldn't change. Mine didn't for one reason. And I knew what I was doing, I knew why I was doing it. And what it was to get word out about bands. First of all, get word out about theirs, about what they sound like, who they might sound similar to. So that lets somebody know, oh, okay, I might like these that hear this band right off the rip, right? Or, who inspired you. So that's a list of bands as well. Who are some bands that we haven't heard of that maybe we should check out? What made you start wanting to play music? What was it like when you started playing, and all that? What would you tell somebody that's just getting into their first band? Like it was all that kind of shit over and over and over again because it was different information and all that. And I knew what the magazine was about, right? And I didn't veer from that. Now, a lot of people will tell you you can't run one all by yourself, that you can't do everything for one. And that's bullshit. I did everything. Um, the magazine I ran, I tried to get other people in to do some shit. There was one writer that's in bands out of state, shit like that, that wrote some shit for the magazine. He did a few pieces, that's it. But everything else I wrote because, you know, people like the idea of doing it more than actually doing it. You know what I'm saying? But if you're doing something that's niche or different, and you might think it has a smaller fan base, guess what? It's going to have a more rabid fan base. That just is what it is. And I'm saying this from experience. Now, as far as writing and art and all that, excuse me, with zines, there really are no rules. People like to pretend there are rules. There aren't. Um, just art in general. Well, as like that. If you want to do something that is investigative and all that, and more like that kind of magazine or whatever, you absolutely can. But if you want to do something that's not meant to be taken serious at all, or covering weird things, or it just being poetry each time or whatever, you can do it that way too. There's all kinds of different magazines. I'm just saying what I ran, what I did personally in the past, right? Because that's what I can speak on. I've experienced it. I know how easy it is. Now, if it's that easy for doing one with music, which normally I'd say it'll be that easy for anything else, but music is the easiest thing in the fucking world as far as getting people to check out shit. Whether it's a song or whatever the fuck, it's that. It's really that. Compared to stand up movies, whatever else, it is the easiest and honestly probably requires the least amount of time from them. You know what I'm saying? But that's just the fact of the matter. So other subjects might not have as many people interested, which is perfectly fine as well. I also know that nowadays, if you want to start one WordPress and all that, it's an option. And even when I was running my zine, I was checking out blog spots and shit like that. The reason was to find more bands, to find out about more bands and shit like that. So I was going to people's zines and shit like that from the past and was looking shit up and using them as tools. You know what I mean? So you even have people doing that. Now, I don't know what it is you want to write about or whatever else, but I'm just telling you, the people that make art are into that shit. Meaning they will gravitate to magazines and shit talking about the shit that they love. Does that make sense? Like Men's Health, yeah, some people are picking up those magazines all the time, right? But there's a lot of people that aren't. Ton of people that aren't. You know what I'm saying? So that's its own little niche, right? There's always a niche. So whatever it is you want to write about, draw about, whatever, you can. There was this zine I got in Chicago. I forget the zine was called Shit Show. I know that the shows that they put on were called shit shows. And those shows would have a bunch of comics on it doing like 2 minutes a piece. I forget. I think that there was some music and shit thrown in. I was only at one of their shows ever, so. But they had some zines they did as well with some art, some other shit, some poetry, some this, some that. And yeah, they don't have to be for everyone that we're artsy and everything else, but there's still somebody out there for that shit. You get what I mean? So everyone likes to pretend there's rules and everything else. There's not fucking rules. You know what I'm saying? You don't have a company watching over you saying, do this, do that, do whatever the fuck you want. Somebody else out there's gonna like what you do, right? No matter what you write about or anything else. I'm saying this from experience. I'm 40 years old. I've been around a while. I've done a lot of shit. I've seen a lot of shit. You know, I'll lay it flat out for you. I got my first job when I was 12. I was working for a radio station aimed at kids in Radio Oz as an entertainment reporter. I got that from pulling a speech out of my ass at a mall, right? And I was one of like 5 kids hired that day. But I've done that. I've been doing music off and on since I was 16 and I'm 40 years old. I started a magazine, ran one, right? I've done stand up. I've been on podcast shit like that. So when I'm saying, yeah, starting a zine and all this, you can do it however you want, is because everything that I've done how I've wanted. And every time it's worked out, and especially with the zine, because when I was doing that, there were plenty of other people out there doing zines as well, but most of them were not doing it the way that I was. I was just doing what I wanted to see done, and that's the main thing. With anything that you're doing that's artistic, yeah, do what you want to see done. That's it. If you can pull that off, you're straight. You don't need to have copies printed, even though at times I did print copies out. And this was a time when I could get the copies cheap enough and staple them together. Up until a few years ago, and I wish that this place was around when I was doing the zine, but I didn't know about their prices at the time. I was getting them 5 cents a sheet when I was doing flyers and stuff like that, but I would have went somewhere like that to print the zine out because you don't need to necessarily go through a printer or anything else. I used to do like 6 pagers. Wait, no, that'd be 12 pager, right? Like 6 sheets of paper usually, and that would have interviews, that would have reviews, all that, and just know from doing it online that if people dig your shit, they're gonna want a hard copy, and sometimes, even though it sucks, it's gonna be better to say no than yes. And the reason I'm saying that is just due to the cost on your end, right? Even years ago, I had people wanting me to send shit to Europe and everything else, and honestly, my only options were lose a bunch of money each time I do that, or have them pay an exorbitant fee to get that. Way more than what it's worth, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? Because it's international shipping costs. And international shipping costs are high. They always have been high. So, with that, that's something that you have to kind of keep in mind. There are programs and apps and shit that you can use to make it to where a lot of that stuff can just be kind of easier on you. Now, the interviews and stuff will usually be pretty easy because back in the day, they were a little bit harder to get, but now with all the podcasts and shit, it seems like people are a lot more willing to talk and a lot less worried about being misquoted for some reason, which is a good thing. When I was doing interviews, I was sending them the questions and letting them answer them, right? And with that, I know that they got to say whatever they wanted to say, and I let them know I'm not going to edit this or anything else. And I even let it be known with the interview this was not edited or anything else. Like what was said was said. The only thing that might have been added was the when it was me asking the question and whoever was answering the question, right? Because I wouldn't always send with the um, marking for me, right? Before the questions. So I mean, if you're okay with asking questions and doing reviews, shit, that's mainly what I did. You can do that all day and fucking remember no problem. It doesn't need to be a shit ton of work. So there you go.